everyone let in?
Yeah.
All right. It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded, and we will now do roll call.
Great. Director.
Here.
Director Flaherty.
Here.
Director Bertrand. Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Geis.
Here.
Director Deschler.
Here.
And Director Aguilar.
All right. I think that's everyone. I see we have some audio issues that are getting worked out. Let us know if that doesn't resolve. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anaskoyo, the land that ILIVSD sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Now to the consent agenda. Any directors have items they wish to pull? I see none. I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
Right, motion by Geis, seconded by Freeman. Is there any public comment? All right, any other board discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote.
My bad. Director Brandt.
Yes.
Director Freeman.
Yes.
Director Flaherty.
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes.
Director Deschler. Bertrand.
It's not my house.
Yes.
And guys, that's my house actually. It's next door to me.
All right, motion passes unanimously. Now we're going to open public comment. So this is the time for general public comment on items that are not on today's agenda. So if anyone wishes to speak on items not on our agenda today, please indicate by either raising your hand, putting something in the chat, and we can call on you. I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and close out public for the time being. The first item we have is 4.1, discussion on Deltopia 2021, and I'll hand it over to Jonathan to introduce this.
Great. Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay, great. I closed my window. So Deltopia 2021, myself and Spencer and Catherine attended a meeting last week with UCSB and their different departments who are working on planning events for that weekend. And I also had a conversation today with some folks from Lucidity. But to give some background to our new directors and to the public, in the past, exactly a year ago, the Ivy Community Services District was on track to partner with Lucidity Festivals LLC to host a community festival in person in Isla Vista at Anaskoyo Park as an alternative to what would have been perceived as an in-person Deltopia that April. Those plans, they were pretty far along when we were working on them and when we had to cancel because of the pandemic, but they were rooted in values that we put on our agenda, that we wanted to have a safe and still fun event. And, we added healthy now because we're working on a public health crisis as well. But that was our goal, is we wanted to provide something that was safe and fun. And we had partnered with UC Santa Barbara on producing that and getting the funding together, by merging their Sunfest Festival. And we had worked with the student organizations, and we had good momentum to host this festival. This year is different, and we are looking at different options on how, we did put in our budget $55,000, not knowing where things were going to go by now with the pandemic, but we put that into our budget, and we did have our pilot program during Halloween, when we had a virtual Halloween at home concert that had 800 households at least attending, that we were able to record. So upwards of maybe 3,000 people were in attendance throughout Isla Vista watching that event, and that was successful. We didn't have any, very little, if any, COVID health order violations on Halloween weekend. And AS Program Board had some events then as well. And AS Program Board has had events during these 2 weekends, going back to 2014, 2015. So they were obviously one of the groups we spoke with at the meeting last week in figuring out what could be done this year. And so we do have, we have an idea, the prevailing idea right now that is still very much just a concept, but has, gained traction, is having a concert in cars at the drive-in. So people would be, only with their household in those cars, and there would be, a way to maintain social distancing and masking if people are outside their cars. But that would only be something where, there would be that would be something where it would be difficult for the district to say we're going to be the primary host or sponsor, since it's not in district property. So we'd need to partner with UCSB and or AS to put on something like that, or to make sure something like that happens. And we'd be playing a role as coordinating and support, since we have the established relationship with Lucidity. And also, if we were interested in creating a virtual and streaming component that would be available to all Isla Vista residents who wouldn't be able to, there's 15,000 people, only 10% of the community could theoretically get to that other event. So we'd be playing a support role in organizing things and helping make sure that there's a virtual end of the event for the residents in Isla Vista, and it'd be based in a similar way as, Halloween, not totally similar, but in a way like Halloween at home, where there's a in-person HQ to stream from within Isla Vista. But that's the idea right now. It's completely conceptual, no budget, no hard proposal on how it would happen. But that's where things seem to be going, is hopefully having something like that. No one's committed to doing anything yet, so I don't want to get expectations too up, and that's maybe what our role could be, is helping organize things to move forward, since we have the established relationship with Lucidity. But it wouldn't be something where we would be the only group moving forward, and that wasn't the case last year either. But and that's not really even possible for us to do that this time. So that's kind of the status quo where we are. I want to see if Kathleen or Spencer, who have been working on this and attended the meeting, want to fill in anything else.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. I think that you summarized everything about the meeting very well, and how far we've come. It's crazy to think that how different the conversation was last year when we were finalizing everything for a festival. But here we are again, and we're figuring out how we can try and play a supportive role. And Catherine, I know you attended the meeting, and I think also, I just want to highlight something that doesn't often get explicitly said, but as a student, I think you have the most important perspective that we all need to be listening to right now as decision makers, because you're closest to what folks want and what folks' plans are going to be and how we can best manage this event. So I know you joined us. Anything that you would add?
In terms of plans for Deltopia, I think you covered the meeting pretty well. It was really just an initial meeting to throw out really any ideas that we had. And I know that we will be having more of those meetings with different community stakeholders. I believe they said every 2 weeks, hopefully we'll be meeting. But that was the idea that really was sticking the most. I mean, obviously the possibility of any in-person activities, even if it's 6 feet apart, is just not an option. So we were trying to think a little bit out of the box, and that's something that was some people were really interested in. But again, it's just completely an idea, and we're definitely open to more ideas and working with those different partners who were at the meeting and collaborating on a plan.
I just wanted to just go off that point. I did forget to mention this point, is that yes, it is still an open question on is this allowed under the public health order, and that's still something, you know, there is some hope that by April 3rd it will be something that would be allowed, but it is still something that's an open question. But we did have folks from the county and UCSB's student health at our meeting to, you know, provide context and advice, but you know, it was still an open question, and it's not something, it's not 100% that would be something that's allowed by then, but there is a thought that it would be.
I think that's a great thing to add. And, you know, as we see the progress that we're making in Santa Barbara County, it's great news. We have the lowest case rate now that we've had in months, and certainly we hope those trends continue. And we're seeing more of our business sectors reopen. I think the double edge of that sword is that as people become more comfortable living life outside of the stay-at-home order, we can't quite rely on the virtual only strategy that we did a number of months ago, I think. And that's tricky, right? It's almost like from a planning perspective, we would want everything, or want to have like very clear, you know, avenue for something like this to happen. But also, we're not in the same place as we were back in October. There's certainly much more quarantine fatigue, and especially as folks have been spending more time indoors, more time during the winter, there is that concern that it will manifest when it comes to early April. So it is a little bit of a moving target, but I think it's important that our board play a role in doing what we can to try and support these efforts. And I know that, you know, one of the real benefits of, I think, what's happening so far is that AS Program Board, you know, has plans. They're intimately involved. I think they're not sure if they are gonna do an event in the evening as they traditionally have done, in order to try and get people off the streets, or if we would do something during the day to try and directly discourage gatherings. And so it is, you know, it is tricky, and recognize we're running short on time, only have a little bit over a month in order to get all of this planned out. But I am also cognizant that just when we worked with Lucidity, we were able to put together such a high quality program in that short amount of time that we had. So,
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I was going to say, kind of relating to that too. I think also maybe why Halloween was a bit different. I think the weather plays a big factor too. Especially you mentioned with everyone being fatigued, being stuck inside, you know, the weather's getting better. It's going to be a lot harder to incentivize students to want to be, you know, in their cars for something, or, you know, in their house for a virtual concert. So there's so many different factors, I think. There's definitely a challenge in that, in incentivizing students to want to, you know, stay inside. And, you know, if they're going to be very safe and stay away from people at the beach. So that's another barrier as well, just as it gets nicer outside.
Absolutely. I think I saw a hand from Director Bertrand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, Spencer, Catherine, Jonathan, for working on this. This is really exciting. The first thing I'll mention is I've already seen some media coverage about, oh no, beware, Deltopia is coming up, which I understand that years ago, there were many significant challenges. In recent years, we've made great progress, and I expect we'll continue to make that great progress this year, but we do have the public safety threat. But what I really encourage all of us, as well as our community partners, to look at is what we accomplished last year, which I really wish that those were the pictures and videos that were being shown on the news right now, which was that most people complied with the need to keep their neighbors and their households safe. And want to give a big shout out to everyone who made that happen last year, from student groups to law enforcement, other public safety partners, IVRPD, IVCSD, everyone did a really great job. So I'm encouraged to see how we can build off of that this year to provide some more opportunities for engagement and fun on that day. But I also just want to put it out there that when we're looking forward to this, I really want us to know that we've had success with this in the past, which was what happened last year. So it's going to be important for us to have more trusted messengers, getting out the word about why it's important to be safe this Deltopia. And then also I'm excited to hear about how we can be creative with that, with some sort of virtual or modified event that's within the public health parameters. I think this is a great idea. I recognize the short timeline that we are on, so our board may need to meet a little bit more often, or a special meeting to accommodate this. But I think it's well worth it. And the last thing I'll mention is that with our Halloween event that we hosted, what I thought was one of the most important parts of that, in addition to just the fantastic content that took place, was the outreach that took place around the event, where the CSD and our partners with Lucidity were promoting to the community the importance of partying safely on Halloween. And that's what we experienced. People stayed home, and many people had a nice time at our event. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Are there other comments from board members? Director Deschler.
Hi. So I have a couple comments. I'll try and organize my thoughts. I share many of the concerns and thoughts that other people have regarding Deltopia. You know, it's as a day event, it's a different animal than Halloween and presents different challenges. And then I think also just being spring and everyone's feeling of fatigue, it definitely presents new challenges. I like the idea that we that the IVCSD would be partnering with the county and UCSB, and I'd like to see that those conversations continue to happen, because I think there's strength, and we each have different audiences that we reach and different credibility. I would think that it would be helpful to, there are always going to be people out at Deltopia, and we know that's going to happen, right? And so what I would hope is that our CSD safety stations are out, that the UCSB health ambassadors are out with masks and messaging, and that we do more mask promotion, because if people are going to be out, maybe, you know, at minimum we can be promoting that people wear masks. And so those are just some of my thoughts. I would just like to, I don't know if this is a resolution or that is even appropriate, but I would like to encourage Catherine and Spencer, I think, and Jonathan to continue to have these conversations with the county and the university to look for mutual partnership opportunities, whether that's partnering with Lucidity or other or entities for that weekend. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you for that, Kirsten. And I see a hand from Marcos.
Hi. So one extra thing I just want to add on to Kirsten's comments are that some of the history of Deltopia and the problems it presented before a health pandemic was littering and pollution on our beach. And the reputation that UCSB and this community definitely believes in, which is protecting and taking care of our earth and our ocean. And just to add to the list of things that we should be prepared for is pollution on the beach, and how do we make sure that our residents and our neighbors are not leaving trash, leaving any kind of waste on the beach, because right now all of Del Playa Beach is very wide. A bunch of sediment flow has moved down the coast over the last couple of years, and it's definitely piled up with a ton of standing room for people on the beach, versus the last 3 to 10 years. It's usually bedrock at this time of the year after winter. And so that's just another thing that I'm expecting that will happen. We've seen all these different beach type gatherings, and those have very important health concerns for our neighbors, but also for the land that we live on and we take care of, and our ocean. And so I just want to add that to the list of concerns, is just pollution, garbage, waste. How are we gonna remedy those things?
I think that those are great points. Are there any other board member comments? Oh, I see a hand from Catherine. Go ahead.
I just thought of this just now because of what Marcos added, but I wonder if, because people, I'm assuming the weather will be nice. I don't know if, I know there was a cleanup, like an IV cleanup that IV Beautiful did on MLK weekend. I don't know if like something very safe and socially distanced, obviously, as they did before, like maybe some kind of cleanup event could be organized so that, you know, you're still getting fresh air and, you know, but in a safe way. I mean, obviously that would be the highest priority, is making sure that, you know, you're not in huge groups doing this or talking to people along the way, you know, at very close distances. But maybe that's and like almost like an alternative planning thing that people might want to be involved in. I don't know, just like an idea, but I just thought of that.
I certainly think it's a great idea. And I know that in the past, the Park District has Adopt a Block weekends immediately following Deltopia weekend, or I guess on the Sunday immediately following it. And potentially maybe there's a partnership there. I know I really enjoyed joining United Way for the MLK Day of Service, and it was fun, it was safe, socially distant, and it felt like I was making a difference. And I think everyone else who was there felt the same way. Director Deschler.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment that traditionally the county or the county or the Parks District closes the beaches for that weekend. So if just mention that is traditionally what happens.
Yes, that's a great point. And I think from the conversations that I've been in, I think that that's still going to be happening this year. And it'll be status quo as far as beach closures go. Director Bertrand.
Thank you. So I like a lot of the ideas that are being discussed. One thing I'll just mention, though, is that I think it's important for our district and our partners to really set a high standard for what we're expecting for the weekend. And that is similar to the standard that we had last year, where people are doing the right thing to stay safe and healthy, which it's a lot different during a traditional Deltopia year. But in my view, for this upcoming Deltopia, people are either going to need to be just celebrating with their immediate household, or celebrating with their immediate household, whether that's at home, virtually, or perhaps at a hybrid event, like we're looking into exploring the feasibility. But I think that's just important with all of our communications from this point out. I appreciate the ideas about beach cleanup and all of that stuff, but if we do it right, there won't be any extra trash. I think it's a great occasion to go and have a beach cleanup and to have socially distant events that bring people together. But if we do things right, that there shouldn't be any trash generated from Deltopia aside from what would happen on a typical weekend. And we also shouldn't have any crowds in the street, which I'm really proud of what we did last year, and I think we can do that again this year, while also making things more fun with whatever we're able to do with Lucidity or other partners.
Thank you for that, Ethan. I think those are great points. And I know one thing that I've seen that I thought was really helpful just in general as we work to attain more compliance with COVID safety is the university's email that they sent out where they detailed the enforcement actions that had been taken against those that were in violation of the health officer order and the potential mechanisms that they as the university, that law enforcement and the private landlords have at their disposal and have been using and will continue to use in the future. And there are that small minority of folks that can't seem to follow COVID safety rules. And I hope we can do more of that and really highlight that that is being done ahead of Deltopia, because I think you're right, Ethan, we should have a standard of excellence and a very high expectation for how the weekend is going to go.
Totally. And at the same time, I also recognize the harm reduction too. So I hear what everyone's saying as far as just recognizing that we can't have perfect compliance, but we can aim high.
Great points. Director Deschler.
Yeah, Ethan, I really appreciate your saying that. I totally agree. I was just going to say, Spencer, I think that there actually is a draft letter ready to go that is signed by the county or very close to being signed by the county and the university. And I thought the IVCSD, I thought we were going, but maybe not, to go to all residents of Isla Vista. And I think it's also signed by IV Foot Patrol that details all the enforcement actions and consequences of behavior. So I think that's ready to go. So maybe it'll be nice timing with Deltopia. One question I wanted to ask about the car event is, what if you don't have a car?
Yeah, that's why we would be providing a way to access it virtually. And yeah, so that would be one of our add-ons, is that we would be allowing people who couldn't get there for any reason to watch from home or from their phone.
And to add on to that, for our households can attend together, just as like any household can gather together. So if there's one person in your household that wants to go that has a car, you can tag along and carpool. All right, I'm going to open it up for public comment now. Are there any public comments on Deltopia 2021? I see a hand from Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I really love that. I really love that this discussion is happening. I just kind of want to echo and thank that the question was asked about having a car. I know that a lot of people in Isla Vista don't have a car. I'm definitely speaking for myself on that. And I guess like it just doesn't feel like equitable to have an event where it's not easily accessible to all people, which I find frustrating. And then I guess I also just don't feel like the movie theater is Isla Vista. But I really appreciate the thinking, and I really want to like commend that. I guess like I don't have like any sort of proposal, but when it comes to like Deltopia and the thinking on Deltopia, I always have thought that like if you want to make a substantial change to Deltopia, you have to offer something not just alternative, but something maybe even better than Deltopia. And I think I'm putting a link in the chat to just like, I just Googled, top search result was social distanced concert. And I think like something like this would be really lovely, because like, I don't think anywhere else is having like live music anywhere else in the country really, or at least anywhere else that cares about COVID in the country, but doing it in a way that like might actually still be safe and actually draw people in to something that they haven't seen in a long time that they can do safely, referring to the link, by the way. So I recognize that there's like 30 days, and even if like I was God and that could, you know, it could suddenly happen. That's a very short time frame. But I guess I just encourage thinking more IV central and thinking about like what would actually draw me away from a wild house party. Right now it's COVID, but like in general, thinking about that question. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for that, Mark. Always insightful. Are there any other comments from members of the public? All right, well then in that case, I'll bring it back to the board. I don't think that we're taking any action now, but as I think Ethan noted, in order to make this happen, potentially, obviously this is going to come back to our board at a future meeting, but potentially we may have to schedule a special meeting if we need to take quick action on something like a contract once there is a more fleshed out proposal, or to make a funding allocation of that sort. So keep that in mind, and we will look forward to a safe April Deltopia this year. All right, moving on. The next is 4.2 Staff Pay and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee. And I'll hand it over to Jonathan to introduce this.
Great. So this is the first of many different agenda items that we'll have that are in response to what was discussed at the retreat. So there's more coming, and you'll see some of them are in the calendar. That's another one actually. But the staff pay and benefits one is relevant because to do earlier, because one of the other things that was discussed at the retreat was the need for specific new staff, and we would want to figure this piece of it out before we post any job descriptions, obviously. So this is it's timely too, because the California Special District Association just released their salary and benefit survey, and that's what the attachments are. One is the comparison of CSD to the entire state of special districts. One is the comparison of IVCSD to the coastal region of all the special districts, like SLO, Santa Barbara, Ventura, Monterey counties, I think Santa Cruz as well. And then the last one is comparing us to all the other CSDs statewide. So special districts statewide, CSD statewide, and then coastal special districts. And then the fourth attachment in there is actually, it's really good. It's what the titles are at special districts usually, and kind of some of their functions. So it kind of gives you some idea of what just the different functions that either we're doing or not doing, or not even relevant to us. But they've got some good descriptions in here of what the different jobs that special districts can do. So the idea that we have here is that first we wanted to hear from the board today, what other information would you want to have to make a decision on where our staff pay and benefits should go. And specifically, I think we should form an ad hoc committee of the board to work with staff, specifically Deborah, who's going to be doing some of the research and helping develop the recommendations. So help start getting the guidance for that committee of what should we be exploring to bring back recommendations at a future meeting. So that's the idea here. So no specific recommendation like any pay or benefits. It's just that we've got this information recently released, and we want to be able to post this job relatively soon, or start posting our jobs relatively soon. And this is a first step that would need to happen, is our board to do this assessment of our staff pay and benefits. So I think that's all. Any questions from anybody?
Any questions for Jonathan? Go ahead, Director Geis.
So Jonathan, have you and Deborah looked through this information? I just opened it up and not sure how it's really organized, or how, have you guys kind of analyzed any of this data yourself and show that my guess is that our district is probably on the lower end of the pay scales compared to other districts because we're so new and we're not mature like those other districts where over a period of time, they start to get, more competitive with the other districts. But I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah. So we did look at it. There's two ways to look at it. First, you should look at our profile, and then that we'd want to maybe match our budget percentile to what we'd want to pay and have benefits for. But so our budget percentile, like statewide, and this is statewide with all the districts ever. So there's like some really huge districts in that mix. So we maybe want to look at statewide CSDs, but for something better. But for statewide, we're in the 24th percentile in terms of the size of our budget. But then if you go to like administrative support, that tab on one of the attachments, and they're all the same tabs, it's just the different comparisons. So my salary of 78,000, that puts us at the 15th percentile statewide, and we're about that much for most of our benefits and pay is below 20th percentile. But some things we are actually above. For example, our vacation time that we provide to our new employees is in the 88th percentile statewide. So we're generous with that. Then we level out and everyone provides exactly the same as us over time. But we start out our employees with a higher vacation time than average, 3 days more than average. But that's one thing to know. So that we're ahead there. But in most other metrics, we're in the lower end of the percentile, sometimes 0 percentile, 20th percentile, 14th percentile.
Yeah, I think just by, easy observation, Ivy Rec and Park, that's been around a long time, I'm sure that their general manager and assistant general manager are paid higher than our manager and assistant general manager. And of course, again, we're a startup, we're just getting going. And so I guess my concern in this area is eventually we have to look at the investment we have in Jonathan, you and Deborah, and some, where we're going to go next to really think about retention and think about competition in the long run, that once we've invested 2 to 3 years and you guys are really running the place, I think we have to, loosen up the checkbook a little bit and make sure that we're paying you guys for retention. And so, some of the other ideas on staff pay, it's really nice to have Jonathan, you living in Isla Vista, and now with COVID working from a home office. And I think we should be on the front end of this of, if we're going to operate like that, then we should figure out the rules about compensating people to, have a home office. And I know the rent's really high in IV. So therefore, if we want to keep our workers working in IV, we might want to think about some kind of, rental subsidies, because, not paying for office space. We've been lucky. We haven't had to pay for office space because we have a good deal with the county. But, if we had to pay for office space, it would be expensive. And so I just think that I'm sure nobody's thinking about that. Nobody's doing that much on these surveys because it was pre-COVID. But I think there'll be a lot more people in government working from home. And this issue about compensation and paying people to have, great equipment, good ergonomic equipment, good internet, and that kind of thing is going to be important for the future. So just some of my thoughts on, employee compensation and retention. And, having a good vacation policy is a good idea because, people do need to get away from the grind as much as they can. But I for one wouldn't, I wouldn't mind participating on that committee. But I think Jay was on that committee before and has some kind of good background. He knows how deep you can get into about trying to do these comparisons, and it gets really complicated trying to get comparable data amongst agencies. So
Yeah, I think those are great points, Bob. And I think it's good we recognize it. We are getting what I think is really incredible, excellent professional work from our staff for what is below industry average. And part of that is that we are new. To me, I view this not even just so much about our current positions that we have filled, but about the ones that we're thinking about creating as we go through this growth process. If we are going to want to recruit high quality employees that really can put their time, energy to make the district successful, we are going to want to have these competitive salary and benefits. And when I was on the committee or group that looked at a lot of these issues when we first got set up, I look at what we offer to our staff, and we haven't really changed things a whole lot. And at the time when we were setting it up, I think our entire thought process behind it was that this was temporary so that we could get employees on board fast, and so that we could have the bare minimum, if you will. When it comes to healthcare, we're using something called a QSERA, which it's not worth it, I think, to go into the details, but it's not the equivalent of a regular healthcare plan. It is not an HMO or a PPO, and it's not providing, an actual health insurance policy. When it comes to retirement, we made the decision to not enter into the defined benefit plans such as CalPERS. And we made the decision to go a different route. Maybe that's something that is worth examining regardless. And it's worth what benefits we're offering to our employees as far as retirement goes. And so I think this is a really good timing for us to be considering this issue right now, keeping in mind that we do want to grow our staff, and we want to recruit people and be a competitive employer for the future. Are there other comments from board members? Director Bertrand.
I'll just throw out there my support for just making sure that we are being creative and responsive for retaining a great staff. I like a lot of the recommendations that were mentioned before. And I think it's important for showing how we appreciate our staff and the great work they do for Isla Vista residents. So I'm glad we're moving forward with this.
Director Bertrand. Any other comments from board members? Director Deschler.
I second everything Ethan just said.
Thank you for that. And I'm also taking volunteers. I heard one volunteer, Bob. This is kind of your wheelhouse after all. You were very helpful and instrumental in a lot of ways when we were setting some of this stuff up the first time. So if you have the time, I would draft you into this ad hoc committee. And if there are others on the board that would be interested in serving as well. I see a hand from Director Friedman.
So to clarify, to the extent to which there was a committee before, I was not actually on that committee, but before I think it became a committee, I helped do data analysis on other districts, and it helped figure out how, which is why probably Bob is remembering that. But that said, I am willing to be on this committee. So if that's at all helpful.
Awesome. I'm also very willing to be on the committee if other directors are not interested. I recognize it's not the most exciting thing, some of these internal human resources policies, but I do think it's important for our future. Okay, well, seeing no other comments then, I'm gonna open up public comment. Are there any public comments on Salaries and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'll close public comment and I'll ask a question for staff. Is it worth it to broaden the scope of the committee to also be looking at the pay and benefits issue in tandem with like the staffing structure issue? I feel like that might lead to more holistic conversations as we think about these things.
Yeah, I think we'll end up talking about that. I guess that's not really, we said we're agendized to create staff pay and benefits, but we'll definitely talk about that. You know, what staff pay, what staff positions will be getting paid and what kind. You know, well, one outcome I think is some sort of you know, system that says assistant general managers get paid this much, this level gets paid, you know, maybe something like that. So we'll definitely be talking about that.
That makes sense. Any other comments from board members? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion if anyone has one.
I have one pre-written if anyone wants help.
So moved.
It's a motion to form a staff pay and benefits ad hoc committee with directors Geis, Freeman, and Brandt. So pretty simple.
I'll second.
All right. Any public comment on the motion? Any other board discussion? Okay, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Actually, I'm sorry. So is this one of those things where, I don't think it is, but I just want to verify. Is it one of those things where actually we shouldn't be voting on this if we're in the committee or anything like that? I don't think it is, but I just want to verify.
No, it's
All right.
it's not. You're free to make the motion and to vote.
Okay.
All right, let's go back to that roll call.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Dashler?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Guys,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, motion passes. And we will move to our next item, 4.3, which is 2021, I think it says 2021, 2022 budget process timeline draft.
Yes. Good catch. It's a still draft, so we'll. So we have our budget process for this coming fiscal year, 2021, 2022. We're going with the one-year budget since that seemed to be the consensus at the retreat. And we've kind of extended though this timeline a little more. And so I'll walk through it. So we've usually approved our final budget in June, or not usually, just twice out of 3 times. We've done it in June, but this proposal puts it out to August with a tentative budget, which might be almost exactly the same, approved in June, but just giving us time to make edits. That's the big change here. And one of the reasons for it is that some of our services don't get renewed until the July and August part. Oh yes, I'll share the screen for sure. Some of our services don't get reviewed until the summer. So we want to just be able to give time to get revised budgets and just have a totally final budget instead of one that's still more of a projection. So in terms of our timeline, the first thing, so March 9th, we were actually going to bring forward the community engagement position at the next board meeting as a concept. We won't have the staff pay and benefits obviously for that yet, but we're gonna bring that position up first. And next we'll spend the first week or the second week in March getting our finance committee together. And we've already picked our finance committee at our organizational meeting. It's directors Geis, Bertrand, and Brent. So we'll get our finance committee back together to relook at our finances from this year, start looking at our board goals will be pretty much done by then. So we can start looking at how we're going to align those and figuring out our community engagement for this round. I mean, we've got the general idea, but start figuring out like exactly how we're going to make it happen. Next up, March, April, May, and June, and even into August is when we do our program annual reviews. And that's a major part of the budget process because it gives us a chance to look at how the programs have been doing in the last year, see if there's any changes or improvements or anything. We'd want to get those in early so that we can see what those changes would cost, if they would cost anything. And that's been, one example is we did the review for the safety stations, the first or second time, and the board consensus was, we'd like a second one. So we had to then, cost out what the second one would cost for that program and then build that into the budget. So that's just an example. That might have, the compost collective, we discussed some areas where that could be strengthened at the retreat. So we'll do the annual review 1 year of that program and see what those things would be that the board is interested in. And then into March, we'd also talk about the community program staffing and that area, because we haven't reviewed our community programs that much this year because the community center has been in a different state than we anticipated it. So we will get a refresh on community programs, part of our budget, and talk about our surplus. March, so into April will be when a lot of our community engagement is set to happen. We usually do a budget town hall in mid-April, and I think we're gonna pull it off better because last time it was, I think, our first Zoom event. So we've done more now, and we have just a better idea of how to get this done. So we'll have our budget town hall, and that's something our finance committee will help shape how we're gonna receive information and what kind of information we want to receive to input into the budget. And into April, we do our reviews of the safety stations and the interpersonal investigator. That's what we did last year. And then we go into May when we review the community garden and the rental housing mediation program. And then finally, in August, we do the review of Isla Vista Beautiful. And so the idea here, the difference between the tentative budget and the final budget would be that we'd approve the tentative budget in June with pretty much as much information as we have. It'll be very close to a final budget. And then it just gives us an option then in August our deadline is by the end of August to approve a final budget. So it gives us an option in August if we wanted to make changes to what the final is, we would make them then. It could be that we end up not needing to make changes and then we just approve a final budget, but it's giving us that flexibility. Last time, I'll give you the example. Last time we had budgeted 70,000 for Ivy Beautiful, but after we had our board meeting, when we reviewed it and changes were made, the program cost became 82,000. And so that was a pretty big difference. And what the actual is going to be now is not going to match the budget. So we want to just make sure that we're avoiding things like that. So that's the general idea of the budget process timeline. It's a draft, so if there's things that we want to change in here, this is the board's process. You're going to be, taking in all this information to make the decisions on the budget. But so yeah, let us know if there's any changes to make, and we can make those between now and the next meeting. And our finance committee is set to start meeting and getting to work in only a couple of weeks or in a week and a half at this point. So this would be direction for staff and our finance committee.
Excellent. Thanks for the presentation, Jonathan. Directors have questions or comments? I see a hand from Director Geis and then Director Bertrand.
Yeah, typically on that where we say adopt a tentative budget, just technically, I think we should be, if we look in the law and look at the County Budget Act and see how this is organized, usually you have a proposed budget. And so it's either the proposed budget or it's the recommended budget by management, that becomes kind of technically you could, load that, and that's you're spending against those appropriations once July 1st comes around. So I think we're okay to do it that way and wait for the final budget. I just think we should call it, instead of tentative, we should call it the proposed
Okay, sounds
or
good.
recommended, one of the two.
Great. Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. Well, I support this proposed budget process timeline. I really like the focus on community engagement. Each year, this is one of my favorite things that we do. When I first approached budgeting, I saw it mostly as numbers and columns, but then I got to appreciate that the budget is a moral document. And most importantly, it's an opportunity for us to ask our neighbors, what can we do for you? While also creating action steps for how we get that done. So I'm really looking forward to the process this year. I think that our budget town hall probably 2 years ago was one of the best board meetings we've ever had, where we had a very high number of community members come out, make their comments and positions heard. Last year with COVID-19, that took precedence, but this year I think we're ready to really get back to that high level of community engagement on the budget process through a virtual town hall. So thank you, Jonathan, for working on this.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Are there any other questions or comments from the board on the budget timeline? Director Geis.
Yeah, I just have one more. I think that as we're going into this later on, we talk about the lease agreement with the county for the community center and the community room. I think we're going to have to, put in some significant time as a board as we start to negotiate that lease. And so I don't know if in the process we have some time at least set aside in the process that we can really focus on that, what was our number one project for last year and probably remains our number one project for next year. So hopefully in the timeline, Jonathan, there's time for that. We have an ability to focus.
Yes, I had put it down for March 23rd to review community programs. I think it might, we'll see what's a better timeline. It might end up being the first one in April, but we're definitely going to need to do a deep dive of that budget like we did last year, because it's the most complicated one too.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions or comments from board members? All right. We'll open up for public comment. Any public comment on the budget process timeline? All right, I'm not seeing any public comment. I'll bring it back to the board and just say for members of the public, I'm very much hopeful that you all continue to stay engaged with us as we go through the budget process timeline. And when we have community opportunities there, those are really the times when we need folks to make their voices heard about what they'd like to see. It's the most significant time of the year when you can impact what we do, and we appreciate your engagement. Even during these weird times where all of that has to be virtual. So we're looking forward to this process as it unfolds. I think I saw, maybe it was a hand, I think it was just a thumbs up from Rodney. But if it was just a thumbs up, then that's cool.
Yeah, just a thumbs up.
Okay, awesome. Great. Well, we're going to move on then to our next item, which is 4.4 District COVID-19 response.
Yeah, there is not a lot that we have to specifically update on this right now, but we've continued to attend the county UCSB SBCC response to COVID meetings, and we're engaged in and we're attending the public PIO or the PIO meeting on Friday with the county to get all the new information to disseminate to the community. So there's actually a lot about vaccines that's coming up on Friday that we're going to be hearing about and getting ready to share. But besides that, nothing major to report.
All right. Any questions or comments from board members? Director Geis. I think you're on mute.
Walking around my neighborhood with my granddaughter, I run into a lot of people and I ask them if they've gotten the vaccines. And, you know, for that group of 75 and older, it's out there and people are getting vaccinated. The county's doing a great job of getting those people through the process. I would say for my age, who I'm 67 and I'm in that group of beyond 65, I have signed up at a number of sites and not got an appointment yet, but my wife did get an appointment and she did get vaccinated and she's lining up to get her second. She's younger than I am, so I don't get it, but actually, so I think that process is working. And then this week, I think it got delayed because of all the poor weather that happened. So, it's just good to see that the vaccination process is getting done and it is working. And it seems to be, fair in Santa Barbara County. I can get a VIP flu shot, but I don't think I can get a VIP vaccination shot. So anyways, just, from out on the street, I see that the vaccinations are happening.
Well, thanks for that, Bob. I'm glad to hear that. And I know for most folks living in Isla Vista, that whole world is such a ways away, because if we don't fall into a high-risk category or not or are not in a healthcare or essential work field, it's going to be a while. But I recognize it's really important for us to help spread good information. And we do have at UCSB as a MCE. I'm not exactly sure what that stands for, but it means that UCSB is allocated vaccines as well that they have been distributing, is my understanding. So we'll continue to keep tabs on that and do our best to push along the correct information and help increase awareness. I see a hand from Director Deschler.
Yes, I was going to say an MCE is a multi-county entity, and it's a way that the state distributes vaccines. So Marion Hospital and Santa Maria is an MCE, and then UCSB is an MCE as part of the UC system. What I want, that's not why I raised my hand though. I wanted to mention that to just really remind people that the testing at the IV Theater is still happening on Fridays and Saturdays. And last week, the public health director indicated that the numbers are dropping of people getting tested on Saturdays and Fridays as well. And so it's just important that people utilize that service so that it continues to stay in Isla Vista. So I just wanted to give that little reminder.
I think that's a great point. And to the extent that we can be encouraging people to integrate testing into their weekly schedule, whether you're a student or not, I think we should definitely be doing that. I know I'll be going down there this weekend as well. So any other questions or comments? I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Yes, a few comments. First off, I just want to remind everyone, especially partners on the call and the press as well, that IV residents do qualify for a number of housing assistance programs right now, both from the state and federal governments administered at the local level. So I know that in our IVCSD communications, there's information on that, and we definitely want people to take advantage of that in the Isla Vista community. Additionally, I will mention that on the communication side from City College and UCSB, I've really appreciated the spring break guidance of people staying put I think that's getting around a lot, but we definitely want to help amplify that as well as it gets closer. And lastly, on the vaccine notification side, I started thinking from a different angle, which is while most of us may not be eligible for the vaccine soon, and most Isla Vista residents, many of us do have an older parent or grandparent that we're trying to help. So I'm sure a lot of IV residents will appreciate information as well that they can use to help that family member at home. And lastly, I'll mention that as I'm sure Jonathan's going to report out in our communications, the state is working on getting the My Turn system up and running for Santa Barbara County, which that will create a one-stop shop for people to sign up for a vaccine appointment when it's their turn in one location, rather than having to get on a wait list at so many different providers. And while that's far out for our community, I'm excited that when it is our turn, there will be that one-stop shop for people to sign up.
Great, thank you for that, Ethan. I'll open up for public comment. Any public comment on COVID-19 response? All right, not seeing hands. Bring it back to the board. Any final thoughts? All right, well then with that, we're gonna move on to the last item, which is the 2021 board meeting agenda calendar.
Great. So this is another one of those that's coming out of the retreat. This is mainly to have your input on format and just content and how things are getting planned out. It's definitely just an early draft, and we have other things we want to put on this, but I didn't want to crowd it too much. I just wanted to see, is this what you all were hoping to get, or would you like something different? It's really just to have your input here on what the content and format would be. I got some already from Spencer and Jay that we can implement, but if there's anything where what you're thinking this should have on it, or what would be helpful for you, or how to see it the best way, let me know either now or another time, and we'll bring a more fleshed out version at the next meeting. But
Great, thanks for that, Jonathan. And I'll just say, I think this is helpful, and I encourage members of the public to check it out as well if there are topics that you have a specific interest in. We're hoping that this can best try and frame when those topics are going to be coming up, so that you can prepare. And same thing for our board as well. Any comments or questions from board members? All right, I'm not seeing any. Any comments or questions from members of the public? All right, then I'll bring it back to the board. Jonathan, this is a draft and we're not looking for approval today, is that right?
yeah, it's just a draft. Especially wanted to get whatever else we wanted to add in before getting it approved. And it's a rolling calendar, obviously, too, but we still want the board to say, like, at least, yes, we're going to commit to having these items. A lot of these are right now like our annual reviews, regular things that we do, budgets and contracts we need to renew. But again, a lot of those renewals and reviews are our active services that we're trying to improve and provide to the community. And we'll fill this in more once we have our goals. So we'll maybe have more of a outlook of what discussions need to happen. And also what I'm thinking is that every meeting, when we get to item 7, future meeting dates and future agenda items, we can put this up and board members can look at it every time and say, okay, here's what's coming up next and what should we add or maybe push forward. So.
That's great. And as a follow-up to that, are we planning on posting this on the website so members of the public can check it out?
Yeah, we'll post a version on the website, there'll be a working version and a one to post.
Excellent. Director Deschler.
Yes, thank you. So you'll add the budget information in this document, the different budget discussions that we just talked about, the budget timeline that will be added to this. Okay. And then
actually, a lot of them are in here already.
they are. Yeah,
a lot of the annual reviews and stuff.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I was looking at. And then I think it would be helpful to look at this in comparison to our board retreat, the summary, so that we can kind of go, oh yeah, we talked about that, and then look at this. To have those two documents would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just say that? You said goals. I didn't know if that's what you meant.
Oh yeah, the goals will be the summary document at the end. And so yeah, this and the goals will be hand in hand together, but this will also have things that are not necessarily the goals either.
Got it. Okay, super. Thank you.
Yeah, and one more thing I might point out, because I know we have the column for closed session. I do recognize that sometimes things come up that we're not necessarily anticipating. And so I might even think maybe it makes sense to like just take out that column altogether, just because we, to a certain extent, some of these things are not all within our control. But I don't know, that's just a thought. I guess it is nice to see, some of those things on there. If we have, say, like a contract review or a performance review that we do, so that we'll be ready for those things.
Yeah, that's what the main reason for the column is, like our, reviewing Ross or me or anything like that are regular.
Great. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, then with that, we'll see this item back now in the future under future agenda items to review. And it's a living document we can add to it. All right, I want to skip to reports and do reports first before we go to closed session. So I'll ask, are there any reports from members of the board? All right, I'm seeing none. And I don't know if there's anything that I would do you see a hand? Director Freeman?
No, actually, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You were correct. There was a hand, but then I'm retracting it.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I'm lagging a little bit, so maybe that's why. Director.
Did you call me? Yeah. So I know other people were in this meeting, but I just think it was a really good meeting today that the county and UCSB had with the Isla Vista property owners. And I don't know if that's something that would be available for others to listen to, but I thought there was a great overview from county housing on the different housing programs that are available at the state and federal level. It was a great overview from the Ivy Foot Patrol on enforcement, as well as from Santa Barbara City College and UCSB. So I thought it was I don't know who all was on the call, but Jay, you're laughing, but I thought it was a really nice meeting. So there you go.
I will echo that, and I thought it was really good that Jonathan was able to give an overview of our mediation program and encourage property providers to take advantage of that program. I think I see a hand from Ethan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Since our last meeting, Catherine, Marcos, Jonathan, and myself met with the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District leadership team just to prepare for our upcoming presentation to their board on Thursday about nightlife. So I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thanks for that update. Are there any other reports from committees other than the nightlife working group? Don't think others. Okay, we'll go to a report from District Council.
Thank you, President Brandt. Just two quick updates that are focused on state legislative actions. These are reports that have come through the CSDA service, and so they're available for members of the public or for members of the board to consider at their own time and leisure. One bill that was recently signed was AB 2107. I had reported on this a couple of months ago, but the bill restores what was going to expire, or actually had expired, a financial tool for special districts called securitized limited obligation notes. And basically it allows for a securitized note, like a promissory note with certain parameters and under a certain amount. So basically it's a way to obtain financing without going through a huge process for issuing a bond. And it's something that is secured against future revenue, future income. So like I said, I provided a report on it before, and it's just a very specific type of financing instrument that can be applied under $3 million. I'm sorry, $2 million, and it has a maturity date of 10 years. That was actually signed by the governor, and the law has been extended for another 5 years. So that tool is out there. And the second one is another assembly bill that is moving through, which appears to have broad support, which essentially allows for special districts and local agencies to fall back on these remote appearance protocols and procedures if a declaration of emergency is issued. Right now, we're operating under the governor's executive orders. This bill would essentially codify the most useful of those procedures and not have to rely upon an issuance of a declaration or executive order by the governor. So in the instance of a local declaration, rain event, mudslides, et cetera, that impacts the ability of this district to carry out its business, the law would provide a mechanism under that local declaration of emergency to be able to go to remote participation and observation like through Zoom or other matters. So it's still in the process, but it appears to have support because everybody's been doing it for the past year and is pretty comfortable with the process. And it streamlines the implementation to be able to help the public a little bit faster. So that's it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ross. And I might ask a follow-up question since you're mentioning legislation related to finance. Are you aware of or following any legislation that would make changes to bring back something similar to redevelopment as has been discussed in the past?
Nothing that's specific to special districts. There's certainly a lot of rumblings about something RDA-like that is particularly focused on housing issues, but there really hasn't been a lot of consolidated effort to address it at the statewide level, at least not as far as we've seen, and certainly not specific to special districts. If something like that comes back, we would expect a lot more energy and chatter from the Statewide Association of Counties and the League of California Cities. But CSDA also is very good about putting out information on that, and they haven't really provided anything as of late, and I haven't heard anything through my networks.
All right, thanks for that, Ross. Next, I'm going to go to report from General Manager.
Great. So I've got a bit of a report today, some good stuff though to report on. With the retreat, we're working through the log of all the different outcomes from the retreat. And so you saw some of them today. The work from home, how that can work. Deborah and I started researching and thinking about that a little bit. It's going to be a big project. We'll be successful if we can figure it out, but not an easy one. But we're also working on the staff structure and job descriptions, and that's been exciting to start rethinking where we go there. So the retreat follow-up has been just as fun as the retreat, and we're rewatching it and taking notes. So that's been going well. The compost collective is back up and running since last week. I know I reported last time that we had taken a pause, but we're back to operating, and their annual review is coming up next month. It's about to be a 1-year anniversary with having the Compost Collective as part of the IVCSD, and we're working on a lot of projects to transition them from this phase to the next on the compost pile operational plan, and we're getting training from the AS Compost Group, the Department of Public Works, on Monday on how to run our compost pile. So it's great to have that neighbor resource to train us. The STEP grant. So the board asked for an educational session to learn more about the STEP grant. We're ready to finally do that. Hopefully this meeting or the next meeting or the one after. We finally submitted our final revisions to the state on the grant because they kept going back and forth and our insurance getting cleared and all that. So the grant's going to come to the board for approval, and we can do that at the same time to have an educational session. And I can say, the more I work on these revisions and changes, the more I get better versed in it. So I just continually feel better able to explain how this is going to fit into our mission. And also, Supervisor Hartman asked me if I could help brief her office and herself on what the STEP grant is. So we'll be doing that. Next thing is the W-2s. They went out to all the board members and staff. And so if anybody has issues getting theirs or hasn't gotten theirs or wants a digital version instead, let me know and we'll get it to you. But it's in the mail to your address that you provided. Our interns, they're all on the calls right here today again, and they're continuing doing good work on the unarmed response to community issues. So look forward to that soon, but we're doing some good research and we're about to start reaching out to organizations to get some of their firsthand information. And Ivy Beautiful, one of the things the board recently voted on was to get a marketing and equipment update. We're almost done with that plan, working with them. So we're getting an update tomorrow, but we should have in March a proposal from them in terms of additional funding on equipment or what activities they're going to be doing on marketing. But things are looking good. I think I shared the draft flyer with a couple board members to get input. But yeah, we're looking good to get the C-Click Fix more out there. Mediation, yes, we were there today, and we got to present on the mediation program and introduce our mediator to the group, which we hadn't had a chance to yet, since this is maybe the first property provider meeting since COVID started. And then finally, the board approved in June last year a safe parking program with New Beginnings. And that never started just because we never had any clients, anybody who wanted to use the program, but now we do. So we're going to start figuring out getting it set up because there's people who want to use the safe parking. And then lastly, just some things that are coming up. We're attending the UCSB Basic Needs Committee group meeting this week or next week. So if anybody's interested in attending that too, please let me know. Deborah's working on the credit card application, so that'll be an action coming up for us to finally, it's been since 2017, we've been waiting to take this action. So we'll have some proposals for you to look at the next meeting. So that's exciting. And yeah, we're continuing to work on everything else that we've mentioned. So that's the report.
Well, I have to say I'm excited to hear about the credit card application. I know we've been working on trying to get that worked out for a long time. So thanks for your work on that. I see a hand from Director Bertrand and then Director Geis.
Thank you. A question for Kirsten, Deborah, or Jonathan about the Property Owners Association meeting. Did you hear any comments from property providers about inability of their tenants paying rent or tenants falling behind on rent? It's been tough to understand the local implications of whether people are making their rent or not. So did you hear anything on that?
No, and it wasn't a properties association meeting. It was it's a meeting set up by UCSB, Community Housing Office. So yeah, it's a different group than they would be at the association. But I don't think I heard anything from them on the rent issue. But the county representatives did talk about the rental assistance program. It didn't seem to come up like anyone was having a major issue.
Got it. Thank you.
Director Geis.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the administration and the board that when you apply for a credit card, you're actually applying to enter into a debt instrument, meaning that whatever you charge to that credit card, if you don't pay it on time, you're going to incur interest expenses. So it is a debt instrument. When you do it for big, like the county, it's a much bigger issue because it's a big debt instrument. But just to get it in financing, getting a credit card is really getting into a debt agreement. But I don't know what agencies you guys are applying with, but we'll look when that comes about. Hopefully we can just get one.
Yes, no, we're looking. We've got that, and we'll consult with you before our meeting. We'll send you what we've got just so you can see it. But one of them is the CSDA card that we had talked about before. Is one of the, I think, probably the main option. But
The other one that's out there is the CalCard program that's used by a lot of entities. So you really want to look at that and say, well, what are the interest rates on those debt instruments? And you can look at a lot of credit card instruments and have very high debt rates if you miss a payment or something.
Right. Yes, it would be something we'd use on a limited basis.
Yeah, I get it, but I'm just saying the penalty is on the back end. Yeah. And they have fees and stuff if you're late, and that stuff happens. So,
Director Deschler.
I was wondering if it's appropriate to give an update on the CDBG process, and because I saw the email and I thought that was a bit disappointing, and I didn't know if it's appropriate to talk about here or if that'll happen at a later time.
No, it is, and thank you for bringing it up. I think this is now 2 meetings in a row where it's actually on the list for me to bring up. For some reason, I didn't bring it up last time, and then had to remind myself, and now I'm doing it again. So thanks for bringing it up because it's important. Yeah, it's unfortunate we were not successful in getting the CDBG grant. There was, we were the staff recommendation, but when the committee, the CDBG committee at the county was comparing our proposal with some of the other ones, they decided to defund ours. I think we were the only one that was defunded. So defund ours and then use that money to fund another project that staff had recommended not to fund. So we were not successful, but it was a learning process, and we definitely now know how to better take charge of the process next time, because we definitely were not in the driver's seat for this. We were just tagging on to what County General Services was adding us on towards the end. So next time we'll be the main people moving it forward. So we know what to do now, at least, and what the process looks like and what we're up against in the voting, in the funding decision.
Thank you for that update, Jonathan. If there are no other board questions for Jonathan on the report, then I think we will conclude the item of report, and we're going to go to our closed session now. And my computer is being weird, so can I have someone else read that item into the record? Either council or general manager.
Yes, I can do it. So we're gonna go into closed session, and that's conference with real property negotiators, government code section 54956.8, and the topic is the property of 970 and 976 Embarcadero Del Mar, with our agency negotiators, board president Spencer Brent, Bob Geist, myself, and district councilor Ross Trindle, with the county of Santa Barbara on price and terms of payment.
All right, thanks everyone. I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Thank you, and I'm going to recuse myself from this item to prevent the appearance of a conflict of interest with my employment. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. All right, members of the public, we're going to place you in the room now, and we will report out once we conclude closed session. Then we'll wait for Jay to let us know the stream's back up. All right. We're reconvening the open session. Council, do we have any reportable action?
Thank you, Mr. President. And the board went into closed session to discuss the item listed on the agenda for property negotiations. The negotiating team is listed on the agenda, provided an update to the board, and the negotiating team received updated direction from the board in terms of continuing negotiations. And that concludes the report.
All right, thank you. Our next regular meeting will take place on March 23rd at 6 p.m. And that will be right here on Zoom.
March 9th.
Motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn.
Go ahead, Director Friedman.
I will move to adjourn.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, made by Freeman, seconded by Deschler. Any board comment? Let's do roll the.
Brandt, Freeman,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Aguilar, Deschler. Guys.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. Good to see you all.
Bye.
Thanks.